So Michael, again, thank you so much. I know it's a little earlier out there than it is here, not terribly early, but a little earlier than it is in Northwest Arkansas. We appreciate you making the time for us, and we just appreciate it if you spend a few minutes just introducing yourself and kind of talk about how you've come up professionally and how you've gotten into this role, talk about what Elemerce does, and then maybe share a little bit about the world as you see it in the development of a comprehensive e-commerce strategy.
Yeah, definitely happy to do that. Matt, thanks. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate that, and appreciate everybody who's joining us this morning to kind of engage in this conversation. Really hope that we'll provide some value. We'll kind of open a lively, important conversation. There's so much going on in the space these days, and these kind of things delight me. So my story, really, I'm a kind of a serial entrepreneur. I had a consumer product packaging and branding business for almost 20 years. I was in that space, and really wanted to get involved in the more of the front end, the consumer experience, and was taking note with a couple of partners of mine, everything that was happening in retail, specifically e-commerce, and how that was really reshaping things and changing things quickly. About 6 years ago, we launched Elemerce. We decided to start a company, and that we were really not very familiar, other than trying to start to sell a couple of products in e-commerce. We just went out and recruited a team of people that had experience selling on Amazon for many years, selling into to brick and mortar channels, and we just went at it. We realized there was a big gap at the time. In fact, a lot of brands that we spoke with were not even they weren't even really considering Amazon or e-commerce direct to consumer. They didn't see it as a largely relevant kind of category, and that sense has changed in a big way. So it's been a lot of fun to be kind of a part of that journey. What we established Elemerce as a Amazon specific at the time, 6 years ago, Amazon specific agency. So we managed full management of accounts and all the marketing and advertising for those products. And then 2 years ago, we merged with a more traditional digital marketing agency so that we could round out kind of the digital experience. And because Amazon is just one ecosystem, and while it's nearly 50% of all e-commerce in the US right now, that's evolving and changing. And those consumers have many other touch points in the digital space, and as well as brick and mortar. So there are so many places where consumers are engaging with brands. When we were just kind of pigeonholed or stuck in that Amazon ecosystem, we only had a very small part of it. So that's why we merged with an agency called Adaptivity Pro a couple of years ago, and now Elemerce is a full suite, kind of full stack e-commerce agency or platform. So we really help companies define and develop in a comprehensive e-commerce strategy, and then implement the different channels, from marketing and advertising to developing subscription programs to Amazon. We do kind of a full account management, but we also consult on logistics and bringing in logistics partners. And so it's really trying to help brands develop that entire strategy. And so that's been a lot of fun for me, because rather than being stuck in hyper focus just on one in one category or one channel like Amazon, we're not so biased now, if you will, right? When we're working with a brand, we're not at the risk of maybe focusing too much on one channel, Amazon, when maybe some other channels are more important or more appropriate for the stage where the brand is. So now being able to look at things more, in a more comprehensive view, we're really able to kind of think what's the best plan for the brand, and what kind of bandwidth do we have from a team, resources and financial perspective, and how can we stage that and roll that out. And so, as far as my kind of view and the experience, and my view really is based on the experiences that we've had brands, right? Part of it is just trying to keep abreast of what's happening in the space and what companies are working on, and what technologies are coming out, et cetera, and how we see the future kind of shaping up, but then also the experience of working with, you know, hundreds of brands and kind of seeing the challenges that they come up with and the things that they go through. And what I really, you know, go back to, and we've done several calls and webinars like this recently, that it's really important to have a full strategy. And by a full strategy, e-commerce strategy, I don't mean it has to be perfect, right? If we wait too long, the timing is of the essence as well. So we've got to move quickly, but we've seen too many brands get trapped in kind of or thinking, hey, you know, Amazon is our strategy, or D2C is our strategy, or Walmart.com is our strategy, and that, you know, a single channel is not a strategy, and you know, missing too many components of what's happening in the you know, customer journey. So it's really putting together what is going to be our game plan. If some of those things are pushed out 12 months or 18, 24 months, that's fine. Let's just put that plan in place and have what are the reasons for, you know, attacking in that order, and then what are the metrics, you know, how are we going to measure success on each, and close that loop, right? Really infuse that with the customer journey, map that out, gather the data as you're implementing these processes, and really start to understand where is the customer and how are they engaging, and where are they converting, where are they not converting, and really start with a set of metrics, but then continue to evolve and develop those, you know, those metrics, and evolve the plan. No, you know, and realizing, again, you can't have a perfect plan out of the gate, and there's no point really, because that plan is bound to shift, right, and move, because it's such a fast moving space. So that's kind of what we've really been focusing on, is building out a plan and starting to map out that customer journey, and with a focus on customer experience. If Amazon has taught us anything, it's that we can win big by focusing on the customer experience and really putting them first. And I know it's very cliche that the customer's always right, or you know, make them number one. But if we make that our decision criteria on each of these platforms, each of these channels, to really focus on what is the customer experience of each of these engagements, and prioritize based on those things and those items that produce the best experience. I just think that's absolutely the best strategy, or best way to approach it. And sometimes the other piece we see in there is that you know, brands will hesitate or pull back or not want to do a specific channel because of the costs associated, or you know, and I think that's wrong thinking, in that if you focus on the customer experience and where that needs to be and where you need to meet your customer, then you figure out the financial piece, the way to either fund it, the way to streamline it so that it can be profitable, the way to understand, you know, what the value of gaining a customer on that channel is, what your lifetime value is, like figuring out the financials. But again, going back to putting that focus on the customer experience and really meeting them where they want to meet you. A couple of other things I just want to point out in terms of the industry as a whole, or where we see things going and what's kind of happening with things we keep our eyes on, is the last year or two has really been shaking things, and COVID aside, which has ramped things up, you know, doubled the size or the percentage of e-commerce, you know, in just a very short period of time. The shift in logistics, distributed logistics is one of the terms for it. Micro fulfillment, the ability to be able to put product in multiple locations, similar to the way Amazon FBA does it. There are multiple companies starting to that are doing this now, and it's kind of that's where we see one of the biggest pushes in regards to e-commerce, and that's a huge enabling factor, because that's in my opinion, that's the biggest thing that Amazon has had everybody over a barrel was that FBA and their logistics model. And so now that that's becoming available for brands for different channels, for drop ship scenarios, for direct to consumer, for all these other marketplaces, it's really changing the way that looks very quickly. So that's something that we keep our eyes on very closely. We work with partners that are doing that to help brands enable, you know, a long list of channels versus just one or two, and enable those platforms. The other thing is, obviously, from you know, technology is always moving very quickly and evolving. There are a lot of customer engagement platforms, from social commerce to D2C, direct-to-consumer landing pages, very dynamic landing pages, and very fast-moving landing pages that provide direct conversions and rapid feedback and data. Marketing automation and AI, chatbots, like consumers are growing more and more likely to engage with, even to prefer engagement with a chatbot, a well-working chatbot that helps them get answers quickly, and that improves conversion. To more analytics tools and understanding really the data, marketing automation, and of course video. I kind of meant to mention that earlier. That just continues to increase conversions, and there are different video platforms, video marketing automation platforms that are really helping drive that or enable that as well. So the logistics, the technology, and then just to kind of bring it all back to that ultimate strategy, it's really, you know, focusing on the consumer, focusing on from a brand's metrics, conversion, right? That's what we like really focus on, is where are the conversions happening best, and what does that funnel look like to drive them to that point, to a conversion. And it's interesting. When you compare, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, the kind of customer journey and how we engaged with them on television and traditional media, and then ran promotions in store and these things, it was very limited, and it was a much different picture than now, where that retail store and those promotions are working in tandem with the social media and the little pop-up messages that they're getting, and SMS text and email retargeting, and you know, display ads and ads on Amazon. You know, there's so many other factors now in that experience, that customer journey, that it's almost hard to keep up with them all, but very important, obviously.
Michael, you said something a moment ago that really piqued my interest. You talked about, you didn't say these words, but basically iteration and measurement, you know, just try things and you measure things. What does that look like in kind of in a real world setting? And what I guess what I mean by that specifically is, are you working with one, you know, one retailer partner, one channel at a time, or is it kind of a simultaneous endeavor? What does that iteration and measurement process look like?
Yeah, you know, and it varies, Matt, from account to account. Of course, you know, some that we just focus on Amazon, or some we, you know, do multiple marketplaces as well as our direct consumer. But we, you know, as an example, for those accounts, some of those accounts that we do kind of run the full channel management and are looking at all those things, we developed an internal dashboard so that we could look at all those metrics, spend and performance and ROAS and all those things per channel, along with organic sales, and how those advertising campaigns and promotion campaigns are impacting organic sales. So we could look at everything kind of on one screen and get a quick view for what's happening, and how does one channel or one campaign group impact, you know, another channel. And so that process, and then it breaks down, you know, further into each specific channel. If we're talking about Facebook or you know, another similar social platform, we're developing hundreds of ad campaigns that are a variation of different copy, different headlines, different graphics, different, different audiences. And we're blasting those all out there far and wide, to cast as wide of a net as possible, and then using software to hone it in and hone in on those best, the best conversions. And then we go to repeat the same process again to try to beat and best that initial winner. So we have a very similar process for each one, albeit, on Amazon or Walmart.com, you're not going to test, hundreds of creatives the same way that you can on a, Google or Facebook or something. But that's just kind of the iterative process, is based on per channel, what levers can we pull, and how often can we pull them, and then let's backload that with our plan, what we want to test, to try to continually improve those conversion metrics on each channel, and then looking at it holistically, how is everything impacting each other.
Well, again, if you're joining us a little bit late, this is Michael Southworth, the CEO of Elemerce, talking with us this morning about building a comprehensive e-commerce strategy. We appreciate you being here. We wanted to give Michael an opportunity to introduce himself and talk about the world as he sees it, but then really spend a good amount of time taking questions from you all. We received some questions last night that I'm going to kind of go through, but if you would use the chat function within Zoom, there's a link at the bottom you can click on. And you can either submit your questions for everyone to see, or you can submit them privately just for me. And I want to make sure we get all these questions answered, at least to the best of Michael's ability, while we're all together. But one of the two other things I'd mention quickly is the reason for making this introduction to Michael is we want to make him and his team available to you all to the extent that you need help in your business. This is a way for us to facilitate an introduction, for you all to get to know each other. And then if there's an opportunity for him to spend more one-on-one time with you, getting to know your business and seeing if there's an opportunity to participate in a meaningful way, we made it really simple on the website for you to make that happen. The second thing I would say is this is the first of our Zoom meetings that we're actually recording, and we're going to try to clean it up a little bit and make it available to you and to the other half the attendees people that registered that didn't make it in this morning for some reason. So we'll make sure we get a full video version of this out to everyone. But while we're waiting for questions to come in from the folks that are here, one of the questions we have, Michael, it says, what are some common mistakes you see companies making when it comes to developing and executing their e-commerce strategy? Common mistakes.
So I already kind of alluded to one, that not really taking the time to plan out kind of a strategy, which is fine, because when they're working with us, because that's what we will help them do and work with them. But sometimes they'll come and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We're going to go all in on this channel, and we're asking the question, well, why? What's the plan, right? And what's the next step after that? What are you gonna do? So it's kind of we see them being very reactive. Ooh, Amazon's a big issue, or other sellers are popping up selling our product on Walmart, so we need to do that, right? So it's not really a strategy; it's just a reaction. So we see a lot of that, and it's hard not to do that, because there's so much disruption happening, and brands are being disrupted. So it's hard to stay ahead of that. Other thing that we see a lot of is not really understanding the customer value, lifetime customer value. We deal with a lot of consumer products, or consumable products, and so not understanding really what they're willing to spend to acquire a customer, and or having a path to understand that, to start to track and understand that the value of a customer and what the real cost to acquire that customer is, and that value can be not just in repeat purchases, but the value that they bring as having consumed your product, sharing your product, reviewing your product, et cetera. So and then I would say just not having kind of some sense of budget as well, or it really would be maybe not being funded or allocating enough resources to do it justice, you know. And I mean, we've seen this since the early days of SEO, right? If a company is not willing to spend enough money to actually have an impact, it's better off to not spend that money, right? So those are three of the biggest things, I think.
Great. What do you see? This is a general question. I think it's a good one. What's the biggest missed opportunity in e-commerce right now? Broadly speaking, where are companies missing opportunities right now? Where are brands missing opportunities?
We see a lot of missed opportunities with retargeting and going to, you know, back to the customer, you know, or focusing on the customer that brings the most revenue and the most loyalty and you know, and is your lowest cost to acquire a new sale, more revenue from. It tends to be kind of a skew the wrong way a lot of times, I think, to acquiring just new customers and any customer, as opposed to the right customer, and focusing more on that. So I think that's where a missed opportunity is a lot, and you can you know, increase the return on your investment, you know, considerably if you kind of shift that focus.
This next question is interesting to me because I, like a lot of people, I think kind of dabble in e-commerce. Is the democratization of commerce good or bad for brands long term? Making it easy for anybody to get in and tinker, is that good or bad for brands?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. I think, you know, to me, and it may be a matter of perspective to some extent, right? I think that ultimately, I see that as a very good thing for brands, because the barriers to entry are down, and you can launch a product and you can go in that competition. Sure, there's much more open doors for competition, but competition drives innovation, and it drives commitment to the customer, right? Because the ones that win, it kind of drives the cream to the top, essentially. And so if you view yourself or can commit yourself to being one of those higher echelon, you know, brands, one that really serves the customer and focuses on innovation and providing a better customer experience, then that just creates an opportunity for you to win. I liken it to, you know, when we started our agency, we were one of, I mean, you know this, you were right around there, right? There were 3 or 4 of us or something, 5 of us maybe that you could find in the country. Now there are hundreds, if not, you know, thousands. And along with that, there's increased competition, but there's also increased, you know, bad experiences that customers are having, which creates sometimes a challenge in to overcome those bad experiences, but it also creates a lot of opportunity for those that are actually doing a great job and focusing on the customer. So it's very similar. It's the same concept as far as the brand. So the channels opening up, the increased competition, the drive for innovation and being better for competition is healthy. I think the place where it hurts in the short term more is retailers. There become more and more, you know, opportunities to go out there, and then the smaller retailers, the smaller merchants that are getting kind of squeezed out by the consolidation and the, you know, the big pockets, deep pockets of Walmart.com and Amazon, these big guys. But as the technology, again, that competition and drive continues to reshape and to challenge that structure, that marketplace, and we see same kind of things that happen in publishing and in several other categories. After that big consolidation comes kind of an opening up and a, you know, separation into, you know, opportunity for lots of smaller merchants. So we're seeing that right now with marketplace technologies and other platforms that are enabling, just like it enables a brand to be able to launch smaller. It enables a merchant or a reseller or a retailer to start and create a platform with relatively low resources.
Yeah, I had this question. It probably comes from a place of ignorance. This is for me personally, but it goes alongside with another question to submit, and that is, at what point are retailers as intermediaries between brands and consumers even relevant anymore? And obviously, you know, retailers like Walmart, Amazon, they got this great experience. But the question that's asked here is how big of threat is direct to consumer to those retailers in the short term and in the longer term?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think in the short term, it's probably you know, less of a threat, especially to the larger, more established, you know, retailers. And those retailers are moving quickly to create a real seamless digital experience. You know, Walmart.com, Kroger, CVS, all these are solid retailers where people are comfortable with that brand. And so in the short term, I think they make headway. In the long term, it's a real interesting question, because we obviously see that kind of flow shifting dramatically, right, to direct to consumer, which if the customer can cut out the middleman, as they did in travel, as we did in, you know, in publishing, as we did in a lot of areas, can we save money? Can we get things faster? Can we get innovation faster? So it's a real, for me to try to predict the future on that is a little tall order, you know, but I do feel like there's room for both, right? There are brands, there are certainly legacy brands whose entire business model for, you know, 10, 20, 50 years, 100 years even, has been wholesale, you know, and using retailers. And even with some newer brands launching, that's a preferred strategy. It's a different business model. And there's pros and cons to both, you know, to just focusing on what you do and allowing the retailer to do their thing and distribute the products and do all that and not having to worry about that. I think there's still, so I believe that there will still be room for that long term. The key is adapting and innovating to meet that, again, that customer experience, you know, what the customer is wanting to, how they're wanting to engage, where they're wanting to shop, how they're wanting to receive product. And as long as the retailers do that effectively, then they'll be able to still capture that piece. If they resist and you know, stay in the old school, then yeah, they're going to be out.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of you know, shopper science, if you will, around this idea of offering consumers too many choices and them not having the ability to decide on any of them. And is there concern on your part that these online retailers, I mean, one of the big benefits of online retail is there's not a limit to the amount of assortment you can offer, but are you and others seeing anything that would concern you about over assortment, having too much for the consumer to pick from, that just creates frustration and abandoning carts altogether in the process?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the job of search algorithms, right? And user interface, and the way that they display products and the way they curate and serve up the options, because you're right. There's no getting around that. We get kind of decision overload, or whatever they call it. You know, if we have too many choices, we want to, again, the whole point is convenience and speed, and anything that, you know, the thing that takes the least amount of bandwidth from us so that we can focus on the things we want to focus on, the better. So, you know, when you look at Amazon, the ability to put up, you know, Amazon's Choice, or, you know, bestseller, or these products with all these reviews and all that, you know, it's making the consumer's decision easier. And we see the evidence on Google and Amazon and all these other channels where consumers don't go searching 2 and 3 and 5 pages deep, right? 70–80% of the purchases are made right there on the first page. And so while that does open up a lot more opportunity, there also is, if consumers are searching for something more specific, they get more specific in those searches and get, as long as the products are indexed properly, then they'll be able to get to more of what they're looking for within that broad selection.
Again, we're here with Michael Southworth, the CEO of Elemerce. I've got about 4 more questions that were submitted in advance. If anyone that's with us has another question that they want answered, this would be kind of your last opportunity to get that submit in the chat function. So please do that now. Michael, who do you think wins in the next 5 years? Is it the small player direct to consumer? Is it the small player in the big retailer marketplace? Is it the big brands, to the retailers, big, Amazon, Walmart, Kroger? Who wins?
Well, the big brands and the big retailers that are established, and especially the ones that you can see making the shifts, so I'll use Pepsi as one example with snacks.com and launching some D2C channels very quickly in response to COVID. And Kroger, jumping on board and launching a real marketplace, using the Miracle platform. Those big brands are going to be great, right? Because they're acting and they're following kind of the relevant trend, and they're big and they're established, and so they're going to be positioned well, and they're going to win in the next 5 years. For the smaller brands and the smaller merchants, it's a little bit more complex because they are positioned to win, but it's much more competitive, right? You have it could be dozens or hundreds or or more competitors that you're competing for those same eyeballs. So it becomes very, very critical that you're understanding the customer, that you're really looking at all those metrics, that you're creating and innovating something with a real competitive advantage, and then articulating that, well, with evoking an emotional response to the right person at the right time. Like, all of those components become that much more important and critical for the smaller brands. Because again, there's so much competition and so many opportunities and so many different channels, so many areas of feedback that you've really got to be on top of your game, and then definitely can win, because the opportunity is just like it's never been before.
I would anticipate your answer to this next question will be, it depends, but I'm hoping you can elaborate. If you are an upstart consumer product company, where do you focus first, with established retailers or direct to consumer? What's the path of least resistance?
Well, Matt, no, I'm not gonna. So what we've actually seen, is that the direct to consumer and those marketplaces are a great place to start. They're preferred. That's would typically, in most cases, be our recommendation, unless the product is, very large, heavy. It doesn't work for an e-commerce situation, right? Or it's a higher price point that maybe doesn't fit that, that in something that people absolutely need to touch and feel and climb on and whatever. So we've worked with several emerging brands. And in fact, that's been kind of a niche of ours, is working with well-funded, well-positioned product companies, from supplements to sports and fitness, that are launching a brand new brand, that are determined to compete in the marketplace and take market share. And we do that online first, because the barrier to entry, the ability to get feedback quickly from customers, to observe trends in the marketplace and the way that consumers are, interacting with your brand, to really understand who your customer is and what their behavior is, and their kind of psychology of that purchase with them is, like, that's all that's all drastically reduced or quicker, to do online versus doing in a retail, scenario, and much less costly in most cases as well. So unless the product really just doesn't fit kind of the online demographic or the online logistics piece, or there are some long-standing, distribution relationships and retail relationships that one can kind of leverage to, get some early pilot tests or something, then it's almost always online and then retail.
What are some of the hottest merchandise categories? I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Retail. I say retail sometimes is brick and mortar, but yeah.
What are some of the hottest merchandise categories you're seeing right now in your client work? What categories are on fire? And is it related to COVID specifically, or is it just kind of a changing trend in how consumers are purchasing?
Well, obviously the stuff that took off in the beginning, the essential items and sanitizers and PPE and things like that. But food and beverage has really been growing online. I think that one's pretty obvious as well. More in the general health and convenience categories versus maybe more specific, like men's prostate health or something, like real niche categories. Also within fashion, like we've seen, luxury type of goods are obviously down. Fashion has struggled as a whole, but like athleisure and at home kind of fashion has really spiked and taken off. And companies that in that space and have seen that shift and created products in that space have done very, very well. And so and then home office types of things. I mean, we've seen that all the way from consumer products to real estate, right? There's this explosion in real estate because people are getting used to and looking at working from home for, if not the next year or two, maybe indefinitely. Maybe that's going to be their new gig, right? A lot of companies are saying, hey, so they're moving to a different place, and so things that help facilitate that type of new normal have done very well.
Great. So who as a student of the industry, who are you watching most closely? Who intrigues you in terms of brands, in terms of retailers, et cetera?
Well, we're watching the logistics space very closely and innovators in that space and what they're doing to compete with FBA, obviously. Large marketplaces like Walmart.com and Target Plus and Kroger and CVS and others and what they're doing. And Google, of course, it's been, where it's always a big question mark. Like they were really gung-ho and hyper focused on this Google shopping model and really blowing that up for a couple of years, and then kind of went quiet on it and shifted focus for a little bit here. So that's one that's always a little lurking in the background, trying to figure out what are they gonna come out with, what are they gonna do that's huge and disruptive. And so those are kind of the big ones from a brand standpoint. Yeah, the D2C brands that that come out with a way to deliver a frozen, customized frozen product to people on the door, just really the brands that are really pushing the envelope in terms of how the experience that they deliver and how they break into a category, open a category that hasn't really been explored yet, or what's the word? I'm losing the word, sorry, but just proliferated, with competition that everybody's jumped into. They're kind of blazing new trails, and so those are the brands that we like to watch and see what they're doing.
We just received a question from one of the folks that's joining us. It says, we're a Puerto Rican coffee company launching a new line of coffee, new to the US. Any thoughts about how to possibly leverage e-commerce to gain the attention of other retail buyers such as Walmart. So how does an upstart company, or at least an upstart, bringing their brand to the States, how do they use e-commerce as an attention getting strategy with the big retailers?
Mm-hmm. All eyes are on Amazon. So you put a big focus on making your presence as good as possible on Amazon and driving resources there, driving sales, volume, and then Walmart.com is going to take notice. If you're on there, you can get on there, you can start to grow and expand from there. I mean, that's distributors have their eyes on it. Like, everybody literally is looking at what products are doing well on Amazon. And if they're doing well on Amazon, or they're reviewing well on Amazon, we want to carry those products also. And so we literally have clients that they're like, we don't even care if we make money on Amazon. We just want to do well and represent ourselves well, because they have distributors calling them directly to carry their products, to represent their products, just because of the job they've done on Amazon.
Michael, appreciate you so much for making the time to visit with us this morning. And again, if you have an interest in visiting with Michael one-on-one, you can go to the supplier.community website, and you can schedule an hour of Michael's time. He can take a look at any information you'd want to send him in advance, and then have some one-on-one time to kind of dig into your business and see if there's anything that they can do to add some value. Thank you so much for Michael, to you, and for the folks that have joined us this morning, and look forward to talking with you all again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day.